Uh, Good morning, everyone. Greetings from Rotary Club of Mumbai, Juhu. I welcome DG Rajendra Agarwal, IPDG Sunil Mehra, Indumati Gopinath, Project Director for Women Empowerment, Kalash Sridhar, Coordinator and Zonal Chair, Jyoti Babladi, Zonal Chair, my co-president Unmesh Sawant, uh, President of Rotary Club of Parleshwar, which is the lead club for this. We have we have 33 co-host clubs. Rotary Club of Boisar Tarapur, Rotary Club of Cosmopolitan Ahmedabad, Rotary Club of JBPD Mumbai, Rotary Club of Mira Road, Palghar, Vasai, Virar, Chembur West, East, Film City, Hills South, Juhu Beach, Kandivali, Mahakali Heights, Worli, Bhandup, Borivali East, Divas, Ellie, Ghatkopar West, Green City, Iconic, Inspire, Jewels, Kalakar, Kandivali West, Khar, Mulund East, North Island, Royals, Ghatkopar, BKC. I hand over the proceedings to Dr. Indumati. Please take over.
Thank you, Dream President Ashish. A very good morning, DG Rajendra ji, guest speaker of today, Smita Bharti ji, IPDG Sunil, Presidents Ashish, Unmesh, zonal coordinators, Kala, Jyoti, my lovely women empowerment team, all the Dream Presidents and 3141 Parivar. So women empowerment, first of all, I'm very grateful to the district leadership for considering it as a special area of focus. We all realize that women empowerment is basically a woman becoming physically, spiritually, economically, and mentally independent enough to take decisions so she can function as a very active member in the society. And we want to reach a place where we don't have a focus area of women empowerment. But the journey nevertheless has to be undertaken because unless the woman gets aware and knows her rights and knows information about how she can protect herself, things really will not work. And hence the reason that we have taken up women empowerment. You know, it's always a woman is told that, or we tell others that a woman can do anything that a man can do. I think we'll reach a stage where we will be able to say a man should be able to do anything that a woman can do. And I don't think that that is not a reality. It will soon be a reality. So just a gist of the verticals that we have in women empowerment for the 3141 family. We are raring to go with a very dynamic team with us. And first, we have 3 to 4 segments. One is on awareness. The first vertical is on awareness, where like in today's program, we spread awareness on legal literacy, financial literacy, domestic violence, sexual abuse, health awareness. Then we have physical programs like self-defense, which has taken off extremely well, especially for healthcare workers in hospitals by very dynamic Dream presidents who have trained many nurses and healthcare workers because they are on duty in any which way. They cannot avoid duty and they are all vaccinated. So it's a safe group, of course, practicing COVID norms. And then we have vocational empowerment, where we are planning to guide women to manage their own livelihood and empower themselves, to which I will just come to in a minute. And of course, healthcare initiatives, once the lockdown is out and we get more physical, we can have a lot of camps, medical camps related to women. And in fact, I would like to share with you that we have established with the Apollo Hospital at CBD, the pink card for all women in Rotary, be it Rotarians, Rotarians, inner wheel or annettes or Rotractors. All women will get pink cards which allow them to go for good discount in all the branches or all departments in the hospital. I need someone to mute. Somebody is not muted. Now, before we...
You need to unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself. Dr. Indumati.
Before we, okay. Before the meeting takes its course, a small line about a signature project that our district has taken up this year, which will not only be a visible project, but bring great PR to Rotary and give livelihood to women. It's called the Rotary Pink Auto. It's a government initiative where 5% of all licenses for rickshaws are given to women, and we are in synergy with this, and we are going to empower women. All the zones are selecting at least 20 women who will be trained completely for driving, as well as other vocational skills that go with it, including getting a license and a badge, and also enabling them to help a bank loan to get a rickshaw from Bajaj, with whom we are negotiating. I would request our special invitee, Alka Murli from Rotary Club of Devnar, who is a dedicated person doing this particular project in full gusto. And in fact, their club is the lead club and they've already taken a batch. And I would request all presidents to contact us for more information. Alka, can I request you to please play the presentation?
Sure,
It will
sure.
be a silent presentation, maybe with 1 or 2 comments, not too long, just 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'll just share my screen. Yeah.
So this is basically the project. Next slide. They will own a pink rickshaw. It will be colored pink so that it stands out and people know that it is a rickshaw driven by a woman. The program is about 120 days, as I told you, from A to Z, everything that is needed to make the person be able to own a rickshaw and drive. Next. And these are just the steps on why it takes 120 days. We will talk to you in detail when we make a presentation for the clubs. Next. The cost is 35,000 for the whole training, not the cost of the rickshaw, please. You don't get a rickshaw that cheap. And 1,000 rupees refundable in order that the woman invests herself into the project. Next slide, please. So this is the cost breakup, right from training them to drive to giving them jackets, towards part payment for the down payment of the loan, which is 15,000. Everything is included in this. So Rotary clubs who are interested need to budget an amount of 35,000. First, you have to select a good woman using your good offices and the communities that you serve. We will help you select the woman. There are certain criteria for that. And if the club has any contacts that will help them further during the training, most welcome. And if you have a Rotary center, it can be used for the training. Next slide. So this is what it is. From leading everybody with the wherewithal through the lead club, we will have co-lead clubs who can give their premises or sponsor women or help to supervise the whole training or help their CSR activity or get contacts with the police, etc. Next. So basically, it's a long-term financial assurance for a woman. We need women who have that fire in their belly and the wherewithal to undertake this training and want to drive on the streets of Mumbai. They will get 1 month supervised training on the roads. So that will be a very great help. That is part of the program. And definitely it can, the project can be scaled up to almost 500 rickshaws from our district. And we can, with our contacts with the schools, interacts, etc., help them get small trips where girl children can be ferried by, so the parents are more comfortable that they are not sending the children with the girl children with a male driver. Next slide, please. And so this is it. The Rotary image will be flashed all across Mumbai with the name of the Rotary Club as well as the logo in the rickshaw and at the back. And that I think will be great because 1, the pink color will stand out. 2nd, every passenger will see Rotary. Next slide. So that is what it is, financial freedom and letting people know that we drive everything, including rickshaws. Thank you so much. May I now request Kala to
Yeah.
take the program forward?
Thank you, Indumati ma'am. Good morning,
Good
DG.
morning, Indumati. Good morning, Kala.
Good morning, DG Rajendra ji, IPDG Sunil, Indumati ma'am, all district members present here, Rotarians, President Ashish and President Unmesh, and all the co-host clubs, dear Rotarians and invited guests. I have great pleasure in introducing the speaker for today, Smita Bharti. Smita is the Executive Director and President of Sakshi, a right-based NGO, and the Program Director of the Rakshin Project by Sakshi, a youth-led movement across 40,000 colleges pan-India to prevent, prohibit, and resolve child sexual abuse. She is a recognized trainer for prevention of workplace sexual harassment and judicial education for gender equality within the region. She has substantial experience as a senior facilitator for capacity building workshops with adults, adolescents, and children with groups across social strata ranging from the judiciary to under trials, corporate to grassroots communities. A recipient of Karamveer Gold Chakra and Karamveer Puraskar for Social Change and Justice, amongst other awards. Smita ji is also Rotary Global Peace Fellow. May I now invite Smita ji to please take.
Thank you. Nirbhaya, Unnao, Hathras, Kathua, Jisha, Badao, Hyderabad. The list goes on. We are trapped in a loop in how we respond to accounts of sexual assault and sexual violence. There is outrage, protests, polarizations, a surge of media frenzy, a call for reform and resignations, and honest, real despair from individual citizens. And then, nothing. We go back to our own personal trials and tribulations. We go back to denial, burying our heads in the everyday challenges of our own lives. Till next time. When a newspaper headline catches our attention, or there is an outcry, or a heinous atrocity shocks us out of our comfort zone, and we all then collectively beg for law reform, for revenge, for an eye, for stringest of punishments. We do our bit. We take our time from a daily grind, talk about it, give opinions, hold debates, make television shows, talk social media blitz. We take out a fair chunk of time. And then we console ourselves that we have done our bit. It is not our responsibility after all. Nor do we have the authority to effect actual change. We are not vigilantes, are we? What is the state, the police, the laws, the prisons for? How can we be asked to do more than this? Well, we all know that the one thing we are not doing is being accountable to that what is happening around us. Oh no, sexual violence takes place in those far-flung places about which we read in the newspapers. It doesn't really happen in houses of people we know. No. It doesn't really happen in our families. In my own house? Are you out of your mind? Of course not. You don't know your facts. These are some of the common denials we hear when we share that 1 out of 2 children experience sexual abuse by the time they're 18, and 90% of the abuse takes place within the family and trusted circles. This is a fact. This is a stats put out in 2007 by a government-led research. We also know that in COVID times, the demand for child-based sexual material has exacerbated by 200%. And domestic violence, homebound violence has spiked. How long can we deny that out of all the people present in this room, maybe 50% are survivors with deeply buried and denied memories of the abusive experience? Can we pause for a moment and maybe go back and have a conversation with the family members and ask them if they have ever experienced ogling or stalking or trolling or groping, or the root causes of sexual violence, which is sexism and misogyny? Before we ask what is the government or the state or the police or anyone else is doing to stop it, can we pause and ask ourselves, what are we doing about it in our everyday lives? If we are all citizens of this country, and if we, the people, have given ourselves this constitution, then what are we doing to practice the right to equality every day for myself and for the other? And that is what we are doing with the Rakshin project today, a youth-led movement in partnership with the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports to skill build 4 million youth across 40,000 colleges every 2 years to recognize and call out sexually abusive behaviors. अगर मैं बुरा देखूंगी, अगर मैं बुरा सुनूंगी, तो मैं चुप नहीं रहूंगी, बोल के रहूंगी. 4 million youth equipped to recognize the root causes of sexual violence and prevent it within their families and their communities, and hold ourselves accountable. Accountability requires the courage to be honest and vulnerable. It mandates us to have difficult conversations, to ask tough questions, and to take hard decisions. Na karenge, na karne denge. हो रहा है तो रोक के रहेंगे, और अगर हुआ है तो बोल के रहेंगे. I want to thank DG Rajendra Agrawal, IPDG Sunil Mehra, Avenue Chair Indumati Gopinath, IPP Kala Sridhar, Zonal Chair Women Empowerment, who's also the coordinator of this meeting for this opportunity. I also thank President Ashish Pachankar and Secretary R. Sridhar of Rotary Club of Mumbai, Juhu, and President Umesh Sawant and Dr. Monica, Secretary from Rotary Club of Mumbai, Paleshwar, and all the Rotarians, Rotaracts, and friends for your time. When I was invited to this meeting today, I was asked, what would I like to talk about? And instinctively I responded, building accountable communities to interrupt the cycle of gender-based violence. And I'm talking to all of you about this because each one of you present here has been introduced to me as a strong influencer in your own right, engaged in making a difference and changing the world into a better place for all of us. And I am humbled with that fact. Today, I know difficult times. We are all living out the reality of COVID. There is a shortage of beds in hospitals, oxygen stocks are depleting. In an environment of high anxiety, insecurity, and failing health, we are realizing that if only we had maintained social distancing or done mandatory masking or washed and sanitized our hands or disinfected surfaces or controlled community transmission or done genome sequencing and many such actions, we could maybe have prevented the impact of the second wave, maybe. But the benefits of preventive actions are invisible in the immediate present. Kuch hua to nahi is the usual response. That's right. Because preventive actions prevent harm from occurring. It is only when we succumb to the harm do we realize the adverse impact on health, on resources, on GDP. And all this could have been prevented. Simple, consistent, and impactful messaging could have strengthened the buy-in from everyone for preventive actions. Because investing in prevention is critical, both for the pandemic of COVID and the shadow pandemic of child sexual abuse, as it is termed by the UN. The harm occurring from experience of child sexual abuse becomes visible after the act. The ongoing unresolved trauma ensuing from child sexual abuse continues through adult life, reducing productivity by 40%. Reparation costs are astronomical. Prevention costs, minuscule. With the coming of the vaccine, we may over a few years emerge from the shadow of the COVID pandemic. But if child sexual abuse is not spotlighted, if we do not invest in prevention even now, we and the coming generations will continue to live under the shadows of sexual violence. We would continue to live a fractured life in silence. I will share with you simple but frightening facts that inform our work and some small steps that we have taken and continue to take with very huge conviction. Let me tell you a story. I will ask you a question at the end of it, and those of us who can, please give your answer in the chat box. I would like to give a trigger warning. Since we are talking about sexual violence and gender-based violence, some of the content may be graphic and disturbing for some of us. 2.5 decades ago, a father who was a senior government official, he would take his 6-year-old daughter to a hotel room of Connaught Place in Delhi, where there would be some of his work colleagues already present. He would take a white pill himself and give another to his daughter. His colleagues would engage in sexual activities in the presence of that young child. There would be pornography on the television. And the father would insert his finger into the vagina of the child and his penis into her mouth. Is this child sexual abuse? The answer I'm assuming is going to be yes, unanimously. Many of you might be thinking, why am I sharing this story? It's horrific. Real life is harsher than fiction. We lost this case, Shrimati Sudesh Chapko versus KCJ and others, because the then definition of sexual assault only covered penile vaginal penetration and did not recognize oral sex between a father and a 6-year-old child as sexual assault. We then went on to file the public interest litigation, Sakshi versus Union of India, to expand this definition amongst many other issues. But before that, we had filed Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan to give a legal definition to workplace sexual harassment that many of us have managed as a work hazard. We have all lived with ogling, haven't we? We then initiated gender equality education for the judiciary, for Supreme Court, High Court, and District Court judges in 5 countries of the region under the aegis of Chief Justice Ahmadi, and ran the program for 10 years till it was mainstreamed. Since 1992 till date, Sakshi has worked relentlessly, from no laws to making of the laws that recognize the behavior as violative and prohibited, to gender equality-based interpretations of the law. Today, we are at the stage where we are working to make the information accessible and available to the beneficiaries, you and me. But more importantly, the youth, who are reimagining their world for themselves as an accountable world. But we believed that this conversation needed to start from child sexual abuse. That's where it all begins, doesn't it? But it is not easy to talk about it. I can promise you that. Let us look at this short 1-minute film that has emerged out of some real-time stories.
जम क्यों कर रहा है? You know ना, Santa to call your gifts back. क्या? क्यों? हाँ, Santa से तरुण तो ज़्यादा nice boy है, और तू तो बहुत naughty हो गया है ना, तो buy gifts. No, दीदी बोलो ना उनको gift देने, मैं भी nice boy हूँ. अच्छा, but मम्मा didn't think so. आप सब जाओ, मैं सबसे नाइस बॉय हूँ, चाचू कहते हैं। वो सांता को भी बोलेंगे।
अरे चाचू क्यों कहते हैं? तूने ऐसा क्या कर दिया भाई?
Makes us think, doesn't it? What do you think the sister will do now? And what do you think will be the conversation between the father and the mother when they get to know? Will anybody actually go to prison? I'm not asking you to answer this question. Just reflect about accountability and responsibility. And this is not really about whether the men are abusing or the women are abusing. It is about abusive, violative behaviors. When the very structure intended to protect and safeguard my autonomy betrays me into believing and accepting sexual violation as a norm, whether it is a man or a woman, it charts a life path for me, where then I'm ready to accept all forms of sexual violence as normal, whether it is sexual harassment at workplace, or domestic violence, or intimate partner violence. So then, that's where we need to start, at home, with our families. I often get asked why I'm doing this work. My own personal experiences with sexual violence as a child, as an adult, the misogyny inherent in our everyday lives, and the sexual harassment at the workplace that I have experienced made me feel extremely strongly about violence against women and children. My personal journey, somebody who needs to get muted, is that possible?
Done.
My personal journey with the social justice movement began with a single question. Can I live in an accountable world where the youth are better informed to make their life choices than I was in my growing up years? I wanted the misogynist narratives that plague our culture, our society, our collective psyche to be challenged and changed. Over the years, my personal search took me into prisons, colleges, villages, communities, corporates. I talked to writers, artists, academics, philosophers, students, leaders, judges, prisoners, teachers, professionals, wives, mothers, and daughters, asking them the same question. What makes us say yes when we want to say no? My life became all about exploring, how do I exercise my choice when I'm most vulnerable? What keeps us bound to violent structures? Many organizations and people and groups have been working through decades to change this reality. But it seems to be a bucket with a very large hole. We realized we needed a large-scale overhaul of our collective imagination where we do not include nor accept that sexual violence against children and people of all genders is normal or a fact of life. And that's what we work towards. To talk to the largest collective imagination in our country today, the youth, and through them, reach out to adults and the children, so that together we realize an accountable world. We wanted to plug the hole in the bucket, creating a social tipping point. We needed speed and scale, a systemic intervention with a proactive mindset for prevention. So we worked towards and got the mandate from the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports Government of India to reach 40,000 colleges and 4 million NSS volunteers. Our vision expands to include educating and informing the youth of our country and encourage a real and extremely urgent discussion about sexual violence, to recognize and eliminate the very conditions that allow for these harms to take place. And that means understanding our own patriarchal attitudes. Not about men and women, patriarchal attitudes, the misogyny around us, and connect the dots to understand how small acts of inequality feed into the culture of sexual violence. The words of this young girl from one of our reach outs moves me and wakes me up every single time I think of it. Coming from a very conservative background in geography, this young 18-year-old stood up in a room, people with boys and girls, and said, Smita, it's for the first time that I have understood how the constitutional right to equality for myself and my sister is violated by my own sense of shame and discomfort with using a sexual rights language. Because I'm so uncomfortable to name the behavior or use the words or call out the abuser, I let the prohibited behavior continue for myself and my sister. While we knew that the home and the family is the structure that needed to be informed, strengthened, and made accountable, we also knew how impossible it is to enter a familial fortress. We needed a Rakshin in each family. Rakshin, a person who is committed to prevent harm, and in our case, child sexual abuse. A Rakshin raider in each family who is equipped to recognize and lead conversations around sexually abusive behavior, address the abuser and call out the prohibited behavior, identify and secure the child in instances of abuse, de-escalate the situation and create safe spaces, and report the sexual abuse. And we made this possible through 3 pillars of the program: the fellowship, the resolution mechanism, and the sustained engagement. These 3 pillars make it possible for building Rakshin who can talk with the children and their families to equip them with information about personal boundaries and how their consent and autonomy matters, and that they have the right to say no. This allows children to know when they have been inappropriately touched and can report to trusted guardians about it. And for that, the Rakshins needed to know. They needed to reach upwards and educate the adults about the root causes of child sexual abuse, about how to talk to children to build trust, and finally, to recognize that it is the responsibility of adults to prevent child sexual abuse, not the burden of the children. While Sakshi has been working for 29 years to build a country where violence against women and children is not seen as banal, the Rakshin project is building a country of Rakshins who are kind, empathetic, and driven by the idea of social justice towards themselves and one another, so that we no longer have to have a society that tolerates violence or child sexual abuse. But the fight for social justice is not something that can be reduced to a day. It is a journey, a long, sometimes painful journey, a journey that is taken by those who believe that the fight is had, not because they can win, but because it is right. But more than anything, the force that propels people will to fight for social justice is hope. It is a hope that rests that the world can be better, that we are capable of change, transformation, restoration, healing, and accountability. If the ultimate goal of social justice is collective healing, then in order to heal wounds, we must be willing to be uncomfortable with the reality of its ugly roots. We must learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable as we unlearn the things that we have learned and that have contributed to harm of others. In order to heal wounds, it is no longer sustainable to attack the symptoms of oppressive structures. We must challenge and uproot structures that allow for this to happen in the first place. Envisioning a just world requires imagination and action to liberate communities and individuals from cycles of violence. It took me 4 decades and a lot of hard work to understand what happened to that little girl inside me who was abused as a child at the age of 7. It was not my choosing. I was 7 then, that little girl. I'm 57 today. And it took me 50 years to understand and then to forgive myself. It took 20 years of studying and working and talking to many, many, many survivors to realize boys and girls, men and women. In fact, 53% boys and 47% girls, to realize that I was not alone. I also realized that experience of sexual violence does not make me an expert to stop it. But when experience and expertise and conviction come together, we can stop it, because we're not ashamed of accepting that it exists in the best of households, across geographies, across economic or digital divides. We can stop it simply because it's possible to have no more shame in calling out the behavior, no more stigma about surviving child sexual abuse, no more denial or silence. We can stop it simply because it's possible for us to be accountable, build accountable communities, and interrupt the cycles of sexual violence, gender-based violence. The Rakshin Project is building a country of Rakshins who are kind, empathetic, and driven by the idea of social justice towards themselves and one another, so that we no longer have a society that tolerates the banality of violence of child sexual abuse. I'm proud to call myself a Rakshin. I'm proud to pledge, ना करेंगे, ना करने देंगे. अगर हो रहा है तो रोक देंगे, और अगर हुआ है तो बोल के रहेंगे. Would you call yourself a Rakshin? Would you pledge to build accountable communities? Because we have seen a dream. We are equipping the next generation of young adults, our youth, to make it a reality for millions of children. We are working towards fulfilling the constitutional promise of a secure childhood, of a life free of sexual violence for men and women, and youth and children. And we need you to dream with us and work towards realizing this dream. This is a dream we dream with open eyes. And for that, we need resources. If you want to build an accountable India, which is not fearful of accepting that we have a shadow pandemic that we need to address, then one way is to reach 4 million families every 2 years to build generations of accountable preventers, Rakshins. We have set ourselves a very small goal for this year, just to reach 1 lakh families. And I ask you without hesitation today, that if it takes 1,000 rupees to make one family secure, all of you in this room, what are you willing to pledge? For a project that is covered under Schedule 7 of the Companies Act, for CSR, for a project which is responsive to Sustainable Development Goals of 4.7, 5.2, 11.7, and specifically 16.2, which talks about reducing the sexual violence experienced by children up to the age of 18. We have shared some links in the chat box, and we know that all donations are eligible for tax benefits. I now want to share a short 3-minute film that captures some of the work during our on-ground workshops. I thank you for your time.
A 6-year-old child was
This is the third
The girl
time
alleged
just
she was
in a year
sexually
alone.
abused children are boys by her uncle.
Child sexual abuse is often hidden, unseen or unreported, and its effects on the individual, family and society are profound and long-lasting.
कोई भी ऐसी घटना जो हमारे साथ घटती है that makes us feel small and excluded becomes. Natasha, the film is not playing for some reason.
Natasha, you need to restart it.
A 6-year-old child was
This
allegedly
is the third
the girl
time
alleged
just
she was
in a year
sexually
alone.
abused children are boys by her uncle.
Child sexual abuse is often hidden, unseen, or unreported, and its effects on the individual, family, and society are profound and long-lasting.
कोई भी ऐसी घटना जो हमारे साथ घटती है that makes us feel small and excluded becomes a secret inside us.
I have been through this twice and they were very close to me.
We all experience something which we don't want but that happened with us.
क्योंकि आपके साथ में child sexual abuse हो रहा है, are you experiencing any obstacles in accessing your right to equality?
समानता है या होनी चाहिए? कौन कहता है? We the people of India give ourselves this constitution.
It's your constitution. It's your right to equality. Why don't you practice it every day?
Through the Rakshan project, Sakshi is working towards creating a social tipping point for an India where child sexual abuse does not occur.
आज का प्रोग्राम इतना हेल्पफुल था कि मुझे कोई वर्ड नहीं मिल रहा है बोलने के लिए।
एक ऐसा घटना जो हम किसी से शेयर नहीं कर पाते हैं, वो घटना आज मैंने शेयर किया।
इतने सालों से मैं ना बोल नहीं पाती थी।
ऐसे बोली as if your life depends on it.
जब मैंने आँख बंद करके नो चिल्लाया तब मुझे बहुत हिम्मत मिली।
लोग कई चीजों से बोलने से शर्माते हैं।
ये क्या है?
और कहीं ना कहीं यह चीज दब कर रह जाती है।
प्रेस शर्म आ रही है? मुझे तो नहीं आ रही, आपको क्यों आ रही है?
लोग क्या कहेंगे, सोसाइटी क्या कहेंगे, उस चीज को आज मतलब मैं पीछे छोड़ के I can speak up now.
Directorate of NSS, Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India has directed Sakshi to deliver workshops to prevent child sexual abuse under the POCSO Act 2012.
Across 40,000 colleges across the country, who better than NSS units, the future of my country tomorrow, who have committed to do service from today.
जहाँ भी मैं बुरा सुनूंगा, जहाँ बुरा देखूंगा, तो मैं चुप नहीं रहूंगा, मैं आवाज उठाऊंगा।
प्रोटेक्शन जरूरी है, लेकिन प्रोटेक्शन से भी ज्यादा जरूरी क्या है? Don't they say prevention is better than cure?
रक्षण कौन है जो प्रिवेंट करे?
It's a matter of your choice.
क्या होना चाहते हैं? एक चेंज एजेंट या एक इंसान?
It's time to speak up and say no. It's time to say stop child sexual abuse.
न करेंगे, न करने देंगे। सब बोलिए जोर से। न करेंगे, न करने देंगे। So if all of you sitting over here, if each one of you teaches two, then it becomes how many?
If you want to be a part of the movement, if you want to support the Rakshan project, if you want to stop child sexual abuse, then connect with us at www.therakshanproject.org.
Thank you, Smita.
Thank you, Kala.
Yeah. Smita ji, what I just wanted to ask, what is the long-term plan for Rakshan? What is this that you have planned?
I was just actually following the chat because the chat
it is very active. Lot of questions in the chat.
I love this. This is very important. These conversations happening in the chat. But to answer your thing, what we are looking at is we want to reach out to these 4 million youth every 2 years, and they themselves are reaching out to people in their own families and communities. So it is 4 million multiplied by 2 or 3, which is the reach that these students would have to reach out to themselves. And we are also looking at kind of that's the long-term plan that we have for this thing, and we are partnering with technology and many other partners to make this vision come true.
Yeah. Here in the chat, like it is like, as you must have read in the gone through the chat conversations, it is more of, is it that when you're saying that all the victims only you're saying that the men are being victimized with all these laws is what is generally that is, do you want to say anything about that?
The laws are generally made for the vulnerable and the marginalized communities or populations whose rights have been violated or are being violated. It doesn't exclude the others. It doesn't really. But it is like, can we set right that which for generations has gone wrong? Can we actually set that right? And there are many conversations happening in the chat, which is saying men are being victimized, men are being violated, men are having a fake and false allegation. And this false allegation, if you look at it, except for gender-based laws, do you find the clause for false allegation in any other law? If you kind of go somewhere and say, Kala, I suspect you to have stolen my wallet, and I go and tell the police that I think Kala has stolen my wallet, and then the police comes and she finds that no, Kala has not stolen the wallet, is the police going to come back to me and punish me? No. Right? But there is definitely, if you say, oh, this person has violated my sexual boundary, then in that case, if the burden of that, I don't have enough evidence, so-called evidence, to prove that or to establish that, then there is clauses over there for punishing the person who's made the complaint. So we have a lot of patriarchal mindsets that we have to address. This is really not a fight about men versus women, because till such time as we keep addressing these issues about me versus you, till we keep addressing it as an individual burden and go the criminal justice route, till that time, I do not see any kind of a solution coming up. And that is why we're talking about accountable communities. We're talking about transformative justice. We are not talking about criminal justice. We're talking about constitutional rights. We're talking about the patriarchal mindset, which is embedded in men and women and any other gender. It is a patriarchal mindset which gives preference to one group of people, in this case, the male gender, over anybody else, the sense of entitlement that has been created. So this is really not me versus you. This is about us together cleaning up our world, cleaning up our environment, and making it free of sexual violence, making it free of gender-based violence by practicing small actions of equality in our everyday lives. Why are we only talking about those that reach the court? The court and the legal system in this country is in any case failing. It has failed us, and it continues to fail us. We know from so many judgments and so much divisiveness that's happening over there. That is why we're talking about accountable communities. That is why we're talking about what is it that you and I can do to clean up our families, our communities, our friend circle. How do we call out misogyny? How do we call out sexism? How do we address our own patriarchal mindset? There's no fight here. There's a togetherness here.
Shanta has raised her hand. I think she wants to ask something.
Yes, please.
Hi, ma'am. You spoke extremely well and you touched upon so many points which were pretty heart-wrenching. And must admit, it was a great start for a Saturday morning. My only question is that, I had POSH in my own company. And yes. I've been doing this for now almost about 18 years.
Yes.
And having done this at multiple organizations, both at ICICI and RBL, where women population is pretty high. We are about 24% women. Yes. It's a little alarming to see that, the system is getting beaten. Men are getting victimized. And yes. I am a strong believer that I know some men are asking few questions on chat. I'm not a feminist, nor am I equal gender person to prove a point on the men. But I think men are getting victimized in certain situations. And having done this for 18 years, in my early years of the career, I saw that women came with genuine problem, especially when Vishaka Committee report had come out. Things had changed. But these days, I do find that when you don't do your appraisals well and things like that, women just complain about their male bosses. How are you coping with, because I heard you work a lot on the POSH space. And when you try to do something to the women, there is a little bit of a backlash. So are we creating this feminist group of, outlandish people just to prove a point? Do you see that? Because I experienced that over the last couple of years a lot more, especially during the pandemic. So this comment is primarily for that.
Thank you so much, Shanta, for your question. There are a couple of things that there's much, we can have a much longer discussion offline on this, but very quickly to answer some of the key points that you're addressing over here. One of the things that we encourage is for all organizations to have gender neutral policies. Something which is responsive for all genders.
Sure.
Right? One is that. The second thing is that it is really about the skill building of the IC committee. How do you do your fact finding? How skilled are you in the fact finding thing? Okay. It is really about skill building and capacity building the complaints committee. It is also about implementing it in spirit and not just in the letter. How much orientation or what is the messaging within the organization that happens? What is the culture that has been created? How aware is everybody about things that are acceptable or unacceptable, or what will be recognized or what will be actually taken up, right? And really whether you say that, and when you come to say, oh, women are misusing the power, suddenly the power. So from no power, suddenly there is this thing which gives them a space for power. But then how strong, and that is why we do gender audits. Okay, how strong are your supporting systems that you have within your organization, which are taking care that they cannot be misused, whether it's appraisals, whether it is employee engagement, whether it is your performance improvement plans, whether it is anything that you would like to say. How strongly are those things in place? What are the structures that are in place for implementing them? And how equipped is your HR? And do you have a culture of people who are oriented as first instance responders, so that when you see the radar and the fires lighting up anywhere, you're able to snuff it out without it having to reach a complaints committee, because all cases do not need to reach a complaints committee. And we can have a much longer and more detailed and specific conversation offline. These are just some top of my head responses on how we are been equipping organizations who have come to us with similar questions that you are, and what we have given them support in establishing.
So I'll take your details, Smita ma'am, and I head HR as well. So it'll be interesting for me to respond to many of your questions, but this is not the forum. But I definitely think there's more to this, and your experience on a one-on-one will be useful, because these structures are there in every organization. But I still feel, and I hold my comments for now in light of time, but let's do chat up separately. I need some, some views from somebody outside of what I do. Yeah, thank you so much. Pleasure, total pleasure listening to you this morning.
Yes, thank you. I think Ashish, you want to ask something?
Yes. How do we take this further to schools? How can we reach out to all the schools?
So all the schools are supposed to be POCSO compliant as per the POCSO Act, which has laid out very specifically the kind of activities that need to take place in the schools themselves, ranging from right from the management to the class 4 employees being educated. Education is the answer, and making them understand about the POCSO Act is pretty detailed in what all other things that their responsibility and accountability is with each of the adult population that people's schools. And it is the responsibility of the management to ensure that every adult interacting with children has actually been through either minimum orientation and maximum skill building. So you need to have your class 4, your vendors, your administration staff, as well as management, plus definitely teachers need to be skill built, plus you need to have your child welfare committee as well in the schools to be able to do this. And it is mandatory. And then comes the next level of how, and when we're talking about educating the teachers, then we also talk about how is it that the teachers can actually give a rights-based language to the students to be able to understand personal boundaries and personal autonomy and acquire that language to be able to speak about it without shame or a moral stigma around it. And that it's quite an exhaustive program that we run. And some schools take all of it and some schools take a minuscule of it, but I think all schools need to do this.
Yes, Adityan wants to ask.
Hello.
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Yeah, I thank you for giving me a chance. I have written a few comments. See, first of all, I'd like to make it clear that I believe in gender neutrality and gender equality. See, definitely speaking up for, but I do like to speak up for men's issues as well. But that does not mean speaking up for men's issues mean that you want women to be subservient. That is not the point. I would like to clarify.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But,
it is not one versus the other.
It is not one versus the other. Absolutely, both should be equal and both have to be given a fair chance at developing oneself. But in today's day, in today's laws especially, let us not talk about society, to talk about the laws especially in today's day. When it comes to posh laws, when it comes to laws against gender violence, when it comes to laws against sexual violence, when it comes to laws against dowry harassment, all these laws are pretty much one-sided against men only. And there is no law which safeguard men against some of these violations. And what happens is, as our criminal justice system is also not very conducive and it's a very time-consuming process. So justice denied is justice, justice delayed is justice denied. So it happens on many cases that when men are going through fake dowry harassment cases, domestic violence cases, who have to go through many years, even in fake rape cases, one Vishnu Tiwari's case, I would like to point out, when the person was in jail for 20 years on a fake rape case. I do believe that we need to see from ourselves, we need to introvert, we need to certainly introspect a lot and have a relook the neutral laws. Even when it comes to POSH, and I thank Shanta Valluri also for pointing it out that many cases due to a bad appraisal, due to a lack of promotion, a woman may, I'm not saying all do, I'm saying it happens, but it has happened that a fake POSH case is filed against the boss. So safeguards or there are no punishment against these fake cases. So what happens is most women, some of the victim women are not utilizing, but some of the crooked women, I'm not sorry, I'm saying some of the crooked women, unscrupulous women are actually making utilizing these laws instead of the genuine victims. And that actually victimizes men too, severely. So currently what is happening, it's a lose-lose situation. It is not a win-win situation. So some corrective action, I believe, should be taken. And one more thing I would like to say that thank you for giving me time to speak, and I hope that this one aspect also will be looked after instead of, I believe that I won't be judged for what I have said. Thank you. That's all.
Yes.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah. Deepak, you want to ask something?
Yeah. Adityan has covered quite a few points. See, predominantly, I also understand that this is not the forum where the laws will be changed overnight. Okay. But here I find certainly some powerful people with connections who has got the hands and legs and heads and brains in the society and in the parliament or in the decision-making people or policy-making people. So our request to all these people who are having power at the hands, they need to really shift their focus from woman-centric laws to gender equal laws. Okay, predominantly family laws in family courts, parental alienation. We have not touched an issue of parental alienation over here. Parental alienation is one of the severe most kind of a abuse what a father or a mother can impose. And sadly, there is no law to protect parental alienation or people suffering from parental alienation. And it is really sad that the child has to suffer at the hands of a mother or a father just because there is no system to regulate it. So definitely there are certain key changes which are required. There should be a very strict punishment, not something like 6 months and 500 rupees for the fine for filing a fake case where you tarnish the image of a man for life, and then he spends his 5 years, 6 years in litigation, and he wastes his the primemost years of his career where he is fighting litigation, and it's kind of a severe brain drain from India.
Hello,
India.
may I request that don't give opinions here. This is a forum for women empowerment. I think we
These
are
are the facts, sir.
no.
These are
But
the
don't
facts,
give
sir. These are the
opinions.
facts which I'm
Sorry,
stating, sir. And since
I'm sorry. Please give respect to the speaker. Don't give opinions. Okay, speak.
Sir, I say, see, the
Let's
topic here
move
is
on now, please. Just
making
ask
society
straight.
accountable.
Yes, don't ask. Give your
Okay,
opinions and deviate from the
excuse
topic.
me, I believe he is just making a point. Let him complete and then
No.
Don't
See, we are working
shout down
towards a time
someone.
frame. We are working towards a time
Thank you.
frame.
I'll go to, I have made my
someone.
point. Excuse me, Adityan, I have made my point and I'll mute myself. That's it. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being appreciative and listening to us. Thank you very
If
much.
I may just very quickly respond to both Adityan and Deepak very briefly. I completely hear what you're saying, and all of this, what you're speaking, I am assuming, and you can pardon my assumption, is probably coming from very heartfelt experiences. There's some people who need to be muted probably. Yeah, and all, I would just like to draw your attention back to what we are talking. We are not advocating, none of us in this room or anywhere should actually be looking at laws as of a solution. That is why we're talking about building accountable communities, all genders. Looking at how is it that we can actually prevent violations, sexual violations, all genders. How can we practice equality ourselves in our everyday life? What do I do? Instead of saying that should change, that should, yes. These are long-term things, definitely gender neutral laws. Definitely you need to be following your passion and your experience and making things happen over here. But can we draw our attention back to saying, what is it that I can do today? How can I build accountable communities today? How am I going to be accountable and ensure that no violation happens if I just focus on children, that they will not go through sexual violence? They will not go through sexual abuse. Can we just focus for a little bit just on that? I thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Smita. Yes, one more, I think last question that I wanted to ask was, we saw your PPT that you had mentioned that all your activities, they are getting covered under the CSR for corporates. Now, generally CSR means we know there's a project and then this happens and then they come and check. That is how it is, that monitoring happens. In this kind of projects, how do you ensure accountability when you're getting the funds from CSR?
So we have very, our due diligence is extremely strong. We have very clear demarcation of outputs, outcomes, data monitoring, video testimonials, very exhaustive, diligent reporting for the program and the financial utilization. So we are not only saying so many students have been educated, that's output, that's simple. This has been the shift in their knowledge, in their attitude, in their practice, that's simple, that's measurable. We are also talking about outcome. How is it that this education that they have had has actually improved their environment or made their family more community in the words and the voices of their family members? But these are not easy things. We have a huge challenge over here because although we are working with the youth ministry direction and we don't charge colleges or students for any of our sessions. It's an education course. We're a very small team right now for about 50 odd people. And our costs are trainer costs, content, online materials, technology, which is like, it's little thing, but it adds up to be about 1,000 rupees per person. And we need funds for it. And we're struggling to get the same because we are convinced that we will be looking at accountable communities where we do not need to have these kind of, that's right, Deepak, we don't need to have the fear of law. We don't need to be divisive. We don't need to be talking about whether laws should be gender neutral or not, because each one of us is going to be taking on that accountability. At this point of time, we are fully ready and equipped to scale up, but funding is the biggest challenge. And I'm sitting over here with the Rotarians who do so much work, and I request that if even just 5,000 members were to contribute 1,000 rupees each, just 1,000 rupees each, which is the cost of a pizza maybe, that will help drive this agenda substantially for the year 21-22 and reach out to at least 1 lakh families. And we have all the tax certificates. We are a fully transparent and compliant organization. And if Rotary members from corporates can support this, that would be like a dream come true for us. And we also give many other, we also offer services to corporates to support this program. You know, we offer POSH and POXO compliances, we offer gender audits, we offer diversity and equality trainings, we give unconscious bias trainings, we look at social impact messaging and transformational leadership. I mean, there's much that we can offer to a corporate as well. Sorry, I just gave a very long answer to your very short.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Smita. Though there are a lot of questions still that we want to ask, but the time we are running short of time. We will reserve the questions. Any other doubts, anything, you can please, members, Rotarians can address it to the zonal chairs, and we will get back after checking with Smita. May I now request DG Rajender ji to please say a few words.
Thank you, Kala, for inviting me. Let me acknowledge, first of all, our Avenue Chair for this Avenue Women Empowerment, Dr. Indumati Gopinathan. I also acknowledge our learned speaker, Smita Bharati, a social activist, director and whatnot. I still can't forget that meeting where Kala called me as a chief guest and I heard Smita and Dr. Indumati. Instantly, I decided to make this avenue as a thrust area after listening to Smita, and I only thought of you to lead this. So, Smita ji, we went on to make the team, and together we made this beautiful team, which throughout the year are going to create lot of awareness among the Rotarians. Before I proceed, I would also like to recognize our lead host, clubs and presidents, Ashish Patankar from the Juhu Club and Unmesh from Parleshwar, 2 lead host clubs, and I was told 33 co-host clubs. 33 co-host clubs, fantastic job. And Indumati, I also recognize presence of so many of your team members today. In large numbers, your team members are present, so many co-presidents are present, so many Rotarians are present to listen to this topic. So coming down to this, Smita ji, you are doing a wonderful job, and Rotary के अंदर हम जो भी awareness Rotary के through कर पाएंगे. I've told all my presidents, create lectures in your club, create lectures on a larger platform in auditoriums, get together where children are called, parents are called, and last time, as you mentioned, Smita, I still remember we have to get out girls who have been abused, give them counseling. So that also, Indumati, you can think of doing that, at least make some difference to some children, some women who are suffering from a long time. So Indumati, you got a fantastic team, very powerful team, very powerful presidents. So go all out, and whatever you want to decide after listening to Smita, you have got such a beautiful NGO available with you. So to make a difference, you all can all go out. Even if you want to raise some money, let me know. We can think of doing anything. Rotary being such a powerful project, we can do anything. And even if you want to do a program on an all India level, we can even work out on a very larger program. When we got Deepak with us, he can arrange a program even of 500,000 Rotarians all over India. Deepak, you can go all out. Let's make a difference.
Sure, sir.
Yes, Deepak. Let us make a difference at least to a good number of girls and women in this avenue in this current year. So, Smitaji, thank you for your guidance, and I would like to thank all Rotarians for giving their time, attending, and please make a difference to this avenue this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DG Rajendra ji. As you mentioned, Deepak is there, so anything is possible. Today's meeting is happening thanks to Deepak's support. Thank you, Deepak.
No, not at all. It's all.
Thank you so much.
दीपक हमारे मल्टीपर्पस रोटेरियन हैं, इनके डबल नहीं, इनके 10-10 रोल हैं.
Yeah.
So kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I now request the Unmesh, the president of Parleshwar Rotary Club of Mumbai Parleshwar, to present the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Kalaji. On behalf of the teams of the Rotary Club of Juhu, the Rotary Club of Parleshwar, and the 33 co-hosts, I thank Smitaji for a wonderful session, which was really enlightening. The topic was quite interesting, and it is really a big subject to think about, to talk about, train about, and we really need to do a lot of work in this area. I also thank DG Rajendra Agarwal. I thank IPDG Sunilji Mehra, the Avenue Chair Dr. Indumati Gopinath, Zonal Chair Jyoti Babladi, district dignitaries, Dr. Deepak Deshpande, all the Rotaractors and the Interactors to be a part of this, and I'm sure we will take this forward. Smitaji, I once again thank you for a wonderful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.